Hello, folks. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania once again. The Springboks managed to squeak away quite an epic victory today against the All Blacks in Australia on the Gold Coast at Cbus Stadium, which sits right there behind me. This after losing three consecutive matches, two of which they clearly should have won. The other, they didn't even appear to be in the match, and squandering the Rugby Championship. And what was a promising 5-1 start to test season winds up being a 6-4 finish. But nonetheless, they finish at least this portion of this with the Rugby Championship having won. Siya Kolisi moved to tears after the game. The captain of the Springboks, quite emotional. He played his heart out, and he also played well in the last game, but he was disappearing for the previous couple of games against the Wallabies, almost as if he wasn't on the pitch. But he finished up this series quite well. A number of players did quite well. But here's the thing, folks. Last year, you may recall, in 2020, in the summertime here in the Northern Hemisphere, Siya Kolisi was quoted as supporting Black Lives Matter, or at least giving that impression, and talking about how it was unjust or unfair that he had to learn lineouts and Afrikaans. And that sparked a whole controversy with people cutting up their Springbok jerseys. Well, I have a lot of Springbok jerseys. So people are asking, what's Chris Wyatt going to do about all his Springbok jerseys? Well, last year I said, I'm not cutting up my Springbok jerseys. And in this classic content, which I'm going to show you now, this is my response to Siya Kolisi and cutting up your Springbok jerseys in the summer of 2020. Here we are a year later. The Springboks may be back at the top of the World Rugby rankings after falling out with three consecutive losses because they beat the All Blacks. Not sure the points and how it works, but it should be close. If they're not in front, they'll be very close. But finally, some good news. Quite an epic victory for the Springboks. This one will go down and be remembered for decades, for the Springboks having pulled this one out. Quite epic. We see that the Springboks have Elton Yankees come in. He does a drop goal. It looks like the Springboks going to win, only to fumble around with the restart. The All Blacks get it, a penalty. And Jordy Barrett breaks their hearts again in the 78th, 79th minute, something like that, 78th minute, and kicks the conversion, and they take a 29-28 lead, and that looks like how it's going to end. They take and go back down. The Springboks do the restart, and then the All Blacks get the ball, and it looks like it's all over. 79 minutes and 44 seconds, and suddenly Dwayne Vermeulen comes up with a steal. Wow, amazing. Saved the game right there, gets a steal. Rather than kick the long-distance penalty conversion, which is possible with Francois Sten out there on the pitch, who had a brilliant game, brilliant kicking game, really did a lot for the Boks in this game. They chose for him to kick it to the corner. He gets it down close to the 22 or inside 22. They do the line out, and the Springboks come down with it. They go into a maul. Their maul did nothing all day, but suddenly their maul gains ground. They pick up some pace and get some space there, pick up some meters, probably because the All Blacks were terrified of being called for a penalty for collapsing that maul. Nonetheless, the maul is brought up to a stop after the All Blacks organize their defense. They start working across some phases. They get it in front of the posts, and the All Blacks were offside. They were definitely offside on a difficult break for them, but the Springboks get the ball right in front of the pitch. Elton Yankees kicks it over, and it's a win for the Springboks. Well, last year, this was my response to cutting up your Springbok jerseys. Hey, folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. It's Chris here, and the topic of the moment seems to be people cutting up their Springboks jerseys. Well, for those of you who know me, know I've been a long-time Springboks fan dating back to the 1980s. Will I be cutting up my Springboks jerseys? Well, what is this coming about for? Well, because Siya Kolisi has mentioned that he's backing the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, am I disappointed in Siya Kolisi? Absolutely. Absolutely. Don't think the man fully understands what it is he's talking about or whom he's backing. As we see Black Lives Matter members beating people in the streets here in the U.S., burning cities, looting, and demanding not equal treatment, but superior treatment. Now, don't misunderstand. The concept of Black Lives Matter came from a good intention by a certain number of people who meant well, but it's been distorted beyond all belief. So will I be destroying my Springboks jerseys? Well, let's talk about what Siya had to say. He said that while growing up, he often felt that his life didn't matter, and explained how he needed to assimilate into a culture that was not his. Well, we can say the same thing about people all over the continent of Africa. Nothing to do with race, but to do with a minority culture vice a majority culture, or a predominant political culture versus someone else's culture. His situation was hardly unique and has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. We could say the same thing of Yoruba children and Igbo children in Nigeria.
Once he arrived to the world of rugby, he thought that he would be able to be himself. However, he says that he had to conform to this world too. Well, yeah. When I enlisted in the Army, I had to conform to the Army culture. I joined something different. I wasn't allowed to bring my rural Appalachian culture to the Army and make it change because I wanted to join the Army. You wanted to be a Springbok. The Springbok culture has certain aspects of it. When I first got in the Springbok environment, everything was done in Afrikaans, and I couldn't speak Afrikaans at all. Well, I understand that. I've lived all over the world. When I arrived in Germany, I didn't speak a word of German, but I learned it. I was living in Germany. I was in that culture, so I learned the language. The calls were in Afrikaans. I had to translate from Afrikaans to English to Xhosa. It was really hard. I reacted late and felt stupid and embarrassed, he added, and my culture wasn't there. We're representing South Africa, but it didn't feel like I was valued enough. I just had to be grateful to be there. So, Siya, your point is that because the calls on a line out were done in Afrikaans, not in Xhosa, you felt excluded. Can I ask you this question, Siya? Are we supposed to do the calls in 11 different languages for the Springboks? Or are you only offended because the calls are in Afrikaans? Well, ladies and gentlemen, Siya said he didn't feel that he could speak out and ask that things be done differently until a few years later. So what am I to believe? Am I to believe that the last 18 months of comments from Siya Kolisi about what a wonderful team the Springboks are and how his life has been immeasurably improved by his participation as a Springbok over the years, am I supposed to destroy my collection of Springbok jerseys accumulated over the past few decades? Should I do that? Should I cut these up, ladies and gentlemen? Should I burn them like an obstinate child because I'm unhappy with Siya Kolisi? You tell me. By the way, these weren't free. I had to pay for these with hard-earned dollars, which I had to translate into rand, Siya, not in dollars. I had to pay rand, translate and lose something, but I wanted it. It was valuable to me to have a Springbok jersey. So I was willing to translate my dollars into rand to purchase these. And some of them I paid ridiculous DHL overseas shipping for. Others I purchased in South Africa. Siya, you're a bit confused, my friend. You're a bit confused by what's happening with Black Lives Matter and the concept of what's happening there. And you need to understand a little bit better. Congratulations on being the Springbok captain. Congratulations on being a Stormer, as I'm a huge Stormers fan and always have been. And congratulations on a very successful career and winning the William Webb Ellis Trophy. But I've got to tell you, Siya, very disappointing what you're speaking about now. You don't know what you're talking about. You're unclear about what you're talking about. There you go. I am not tearing up my Springboks jerseys. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, I'll double down. And I'll sit down for a cup of coffee with Siya Kolisi and talk to him about equality and inclusion and point out to him that it is a two-way street. When you join another organization from the outside and you accept their norms and become part of the team, you don't betray that team later, whether that team is the Army, becoming a national of another nation, or joining a national side for rugby. If you're a Pacific Islander and you join the All Blacks, then you learn the anthem. You learn the haka. You learn the cultural mores and norms of that team. If Pacific Islanders can learn the haka, why can't Siya Kolisi learn Afrikaans to do lineouts? Ladies and gentlemen, I am not cutting up my Springboks jerseys, and I hope that you don't either. Because to me, it's a silly waste of resources and time, and it's not a good use of your money. Particularly in the midst of a pandemic in which millions of people no longer have employment, why would you want to tear these things up? If you're unhappy, donate your Springbok jersey to a deserving child who can't afford it or an adult who doesn't have the resources. And there you have it. There's my take on cutting up your Springbok jerseys. Cheers.
You see, I pay far too much money for my jerseys and I've been collecting for a long time to have one player whose misguided comments send people into a tizzy. Here we are a year later, and the Springboks are back on the field, and they finished this first 10 test of 2021 with 6 victories and 4 losses. 2 to the Wallabies and 1 to the All Blacks. So they come back and defeat today. Well, there you go, folks. Thanks for tuning in, being a supporter of Rugby Ascendant and Chris White Africa. Appreciate your support. Be sure to smash the like button. Feel free to leave a comment behind on this classic Chris content. This content, in case you're wondering what happened to it, was on my original 17-year-old YouTube channel that was unjustly deleted over accusations and claims of things that were never stated in my videos, that never existed, pure fiction, but the channel went away just the same. So here it is restored on these 2 new channels, and hope you enjoy this content. Take care, everybody. Be sure to smash the like button. Cheers.